Hello and welcome to the Print Political Adda. I'm Apoorva Mandhani, and in this episode we're going to be discussing the special intensive revision in Bihar. We're going to be discussing the political row over it, the concerns and the options that the Election Commission of India has. For this episode, of course, we have my colleague Sourav Barman, and we have with us former Election Commissioner Mr. Ashok Lavasa joining us. Thank you so much for joining us, sir. Sir, to begin with, if you could tell us how do you look at this exercise and explain to us what the ECI is doing for starters.
So as far as the purpose of this electoral roll revision is concerned, the order issued by the Election Commission on the 24th of June, it says that they are carrying out a special intensive revision throughout the country. But to begin with, it is starting in Bihar. And the purpose stated was that they want to include all eligible voters. They want to exclude the ineligible voters. And at the same time, have a system which is transparent so that the documents which people submit are uploaded in the system because of modern technology and upgradation of the system. So I think these are the three objectives that the Election Commission stated. Now, having said this, one must understand that the purification and updating of electoral roll is a normal routine exercise. There are different kinds of revision permissible as per the law. One is an annual revision, which the Election Commission always does. Now, of course, I'm sure you would know that because the cutoff date has increased to every quarter, so anybody becoming 18 at the beginning of the quarter, he can enroll himself. So there's an ongoing exercise of updating the electoral roll. Then there is a summary revision which is undertaken before a state goes to the poll or before any election. And then there is an intensive revision which is provided for in the law. So the intensive revision is taken up in special circumstances. It could be restricted to a parliament constituency or to a few districts in special circumstances. But this time the Election Commission has chosen to call this exercise special intensive revision. And what has been announced is that all the electors who exist on the roll, which is more than 7.9 crore of people, they will be given enumeration forms which they must fill, sign and submit to the respective BLO or upload it on the system by the 25th of July. Now, what the Election Commission has done is that they have divided this 7.9 crore electors into two categories. One is those that were enrolled before 2003 and those that are enrolled after 2003. And for either of this category, different kinds of documents are prescribed for submission. And further, the post-2003 electors, they have also been divided into three categories depending on their date of birth, and people falling in different groups, that is three groups, they must also submit a different set of documents. So I think that is the broad outline of this exercise. And after the 25th of July, the draft roll will be published on the 1st of August. There'll be a period of claims and objections for about 30 days, and thereafter the roll will be finalized.
Right. Sir, of course, like you said, so revision and updating of roles is usual course of exercise. This is something that ECI has always been undertaking and does undertake regularly. The contentious bit here in the current exercise seems to be the part where the ECI may be determining the citizenship of citizens as well, or of people applying to be voters through the exercise. How was this exercise conducted earlier, and what is the scope of the current exercise? Is the scope different from how it has usually been done, how roles have usually been revised?
So the last intensive revision in Bihar, according to the Elections Commission's notification, was in 2003, and that is why they have divided the electors into two groups. Now, to the best of my understanding, earlier the system of revision was different in the sense that the BLO would go door to door and check whether the people who are enrolled in the earlier electoral roll they do exist. If some of them have left permanently or if somebody has died, the purpose of the intensive revision was to update the role by consulting the local residents whether they still reside in this area. And based on this exercise, the draft rule will be prepared. Now, the unfortunate part is that that order of 2003 is not in the public domain, so we cannot say it with certainty the methodology that was followed. I wish Election Commission puts it in the public domain so that people understand whether the procedure now being followed is the same, or if there is a departure, then why is there a departure. So that is one part. The other part which you mentioned about citizenship, Election Commission said that those who exist in the electoral roll of 2003, they have used the word that that entry will have evidentiary value of their eligibility as well as presumption of citizenship. Now, this is something new which ECI had not done in the past. It implies that all those who have appeared in the role after 2003, they will have to establish their citizenship by providing one of the documents which ECI has prescribed. So that is the contentious part, that is ECI entering into an exercise which will determine citizenship of the electors. Now, having said this, one must also understand that according to Article 326 of the Constitution, only Indian citizens are eligible to vote provided they are 18 years of age and there is no disqualification against them. But this provision existed since the beginning, and ECI had established procedures by which they would determine that the person who is enrolled is eligible and he's an ordinary resident. So this procedure had been going on for more than 70 years. I don't understand why ECI has departed from this time tested procedure, because, in any case, under the Citizenship Act, ECI is not the competent authority to determine citizenship. And therefore, two questions arise. One question is that what happens to those electors who were already in the electoral roll in the past, and if for some reason their names are left out, what will be the fate of their citizenship? That is an open question, and I think it rightly has created some anxiety. But there is another question, and that is that does it mean that all those who are now included in the electoral roll, their citizenship cannot be questioned or challenged because it has been established by ECI? Is that presumption correct? Is the government willing to accept that presumption? I think these are questions which are contentious.
No, so during the course of the current exercise, we have seen sources from the Election Commission claim that BLOs have come across people of Myanmarese, Bangladeshi, and Nepali descent in Bihar. So now, where is this coming from? Because this, as you rightly mentioned, this does not come under the remit of the Election Commission at all. Can BLOs, actually declare the nationalities of doubtful citizens?
You are right, and but let me admit that I have not seen any statement made by the Election Commission officially
Which is
saying
my
that they
sources.
right. So they have, whether they have these complaints or this is in their notice. Having said that, I think Election Commission, if they get these inputs that there is large scale infiltration in any of the electoral roll, or if there are some very peculiar circumstances in any constituency, any district, then the law empowers them, authorizes them to carry out a specific intensive revision in that area. The second thing is that even under the existing rules, if the citizenship of any existing elector is challenged by anyone, there is a provision that somebody can object, but the onus of providing evidence that creates doubt about the elector's citizenship rests on the objector, because the elector has already been admitted after following the due process by the election commission. So somebody who challenges, the burden of proof lies on him. And if after proper scrutiny and inquiry, the ECI does come to the conclusion that this person is of doubtful citizenship, then they cannot declare him as a non-citizen, but they are within their rights to refer his case or her case to the Ministry of Home Affairs for a proper determination of his citizenship. Now, I don't know whether you are aware, but a similar uh, exercise was done in Assam many years ago, where a D list was created. So those people whose citizenship was under question, they were put in a doubtful categories list. So they were called D voters. And what it meant was that they were not allowed to vote in the election till the competent authority or the tribunal determined their citizenship. Now, so many years later, today we don't know what is the fate of those people, whether they have regained their citizenship or they have lost their citizenship completely, or whether they have been readmitted in the electoral roll. So this information is not in the public domain. So I think this exercise, which is being undertaken in Bihar, could lead to such electors whose citizenship comes under a shadow. And then what will happen to them? Will the state government or the government of India determine their citizenship? I think that is a very important apprehension.
So one question on, what do you make of this push from the election commission to ensure that people enlist themselves as voters in places where they live rather than where they come from or where their native place is? Because EC has been rather flexible all this while on this front. Suddenly you have seen this push from the CEC himself.
Yes, I think Election Commission of India from the beginning, 1950, since it was established, it has generally followed a very inclusive approach, very friendly approach, very participatory approach, in which it encourages as many people as possible who think that they are eligible to enroll as electors. Now, you must understand that in India, the architecture is such that election commission considers it its responsibility to include as many electors as possible. Casting a vote is the elector's choice. Whether he or she wants to cast a vote, that is their outlook. But ECI makes extra effort to encourage people to enroll. And in fact, they've gone a step further. They even encourage people to participate in the voting. So ECI has been following a very proactive, friendly, empathetic approach. So this approach, which is now being followed, it unfortunately casts the burden on the elector, that if for some reason one of these 7.9 crore people doesn't apply, then he stands to be excluded from the electoral roll, whereas he was earlier included. So there could be any reason because of which I failed to submit my enumeration form. Does it mean that I should lose my right, my constitutional right? The second thing is, so which means that all the 7.98 crore people, they have to submit their enumeration form. So the question is not whether you were earlier in the electoral roll or later. Even if I was in the electoral roll for the last 50, 60 years, today, if for some reason my form does not reach the PLO, then I lose my right. So is that fair? Secondly, even those who are enrolled after 2003, they have been enrolled following the same procedure which was adopted in the case of pre 2003. So, to ascribe evidentiary value of citizenship on one set and not on the other, I think that also is discriminatory.
So, one of the concerns when we talk about the potential of voters being left out from this exercise is also the timeline, the strict timeline with the Bihar election scheduled within the next few months. And this is something opposition has been pointing out. This is something that was pointed out in the Supreme Court as well. How do you look at it? How long should these exercises ideally take? What should be the ideal timeline?
I think there are two ways of looking at it. One is the duration of the exercise, and the other is the timing. The timing has become contentious, and this is one of the issues that Supreme Court has also flagged for consideration, because this exercise is coming on the heels of the imminent state assembly election. So, therefore, for people who might lose their right, it's a real threat. There is no time for remedial action, or let's say there is no adequate time for remedial action. So that is as far as the timing is concerned. But even if you look at the duration, I think an exercise as fundamental as this, whatever be the other reservations, the basic reservations that I have mentioned about citizenship, but just the procedural aspect, it is a Herculean task to complete this exercise in the 80 or 90 days or 70 days that have been provided. If one wants to undertake such a big exercise, I think the proper thing to do is to first have a campaign by which you can educate all the stakeholders and the electors that this is what we intend to do. This is the purpose of our exercise, and this is what we expect you to do to participate in this exercise. Consult as many people as possible, announce this upfront, and then give ample time to people that, okay, you'll have this much time. If you fail, then you'll get another chance, you'll get a second chance, because you are dealing with people who were already enrolled. You're not dealing with people who are applying for the first time to be enrolled. And therefore, I think one should be rather liberal in the timeline, asking people to complete these procedural formalities.
So this whole exercise has sparked a lot of anxiety, a lot of concern, and the opposition parties have, and something unprecedented is playing out in Indian polity right now. The way election commission is being targeted by the entire opposition. This has not happened in India's history in the past. As someone who has served in the commission, does this worry you? Does this do you find it painful?
Well, I think it is a little worrisome that there should be so much noise and opposition to an exercise which is a legal exercise, and to an exercise which an institution like the Election Commission, which has such a good record of its credibility, should be undertaking. So I think something is amiss, and that is the reason why there is so much of opposition. Otherwise, nobody is opposed to purification of electoral rolls. Nobody is opposed to the fact that ineligible people should not be admitted in the electoral roll. I don't think anybody who's opposing this exercise has said that whatever be the provision of Article 326, if somebody is admitted, even if he is ineligible, you should not beat him out. I don't think anybody is saying that, because the existing procedures permit that exercise. So I think we need to give it a pause, give people an opportunity to understand this thoroughly, and revise the procedure so that it becomes easy for people to comply with your requirements.
So when you say you feel something is amiss in this entire episode, you feel in a way the intent of the election commission is also suspect?
No, I have no reason to doubt the intention of the commission. Because the purpose they have stated is very clear. So, on the intention, I have no reason to believe that they have any other intention. But the fact that some practical aspects of this exercise may have not been anticipated and which are now creating problems in the field, I think that is causing problem.
So, within the concerns with regard to purification, as you mentioned, I mean, people may not say it in those many words, but the opposition has been raising concerns that the exercise may lead to maybe targeting of minorities. How do you view these allegations?
Well, as I said, the political parties have full freedom to draw whatever conclusions or whatever apprehensions they want to entertain. So I can't stop that apprehension or that expression of that apprehension by any political party. So my own feeling is that I am more worried about the practicality of this exercise. I am more worried about the principles involved in this exercise. Nobody should be excluded. I mean, why single out any particular group of people? I don't think that any single individual who is eligible deserves to be excluded from this exercise.
So, what are the things that the election commission can do at this point to allay all those doubts, surrounding
Well,
this entire exercise?
my own sense is that this exercise should be paused and we should go back to the electoral roll as it existed before this exercise commenced and undertake this exercise in good time with proper preparation. But the existing electoral roll before 24th of June, there is a provision in the law to keep updating that. If there are new people who have become eligible, they can be admitted in the roll. Equally, if there are deletions, they can be made till the time of the election. So that routine updation is even now possible. And even during this period, if somebody raises objection about specific electors, then the EROs have opportunity to follow the due process if they think that somebody needs to be excluded. So I think that process is still available. So my own sense is that given the fact that elections could be announced anytime end of September or October, the the enormity of the task in completing this exercise is so much that rather than do it in a hurry, it should be given a pause and then taken up in good time after the elections.
So, you feel the entire thing should be paused, even if, say, the election commission agrees to consider the Supreme Court's suggestion to, say, accept Aadhaar, ration card, and Epic card as admissible documents?
You see, what that will do is that instead of 11, there will be 14 documents. So the obligation of those who want to be included will continue. It is only that you are telling them that give some more documents. And that raises another question that if you admit the Epic, then all these guys already have Epic. And that is how they're on the electoral roll. So if everybody has an Epic, as per the election commission's own electoral roll, then why ask them to submit the Epic again? As far as removing those who have died or those who are not found to be ordinary residents, as I said, that is still available. That possibility still exists if you follow the normal process itself. So that is the reason why I say that expanding the list of, and there is another thing. Ultimately, all these 11 documents or the Aadhaar, Epic, ration card, if you include all that, are you still fulfilling the requirement of or certifying the citizenship of these people? Because you have said that those who existed till 2003, they are deemed to be citizens. So, can one draw the conclusion that therefore all those who are now admitted in the electoral roll, they're all citizens of India? And nobody will question their citizenship. Is the election commission willing to take on that responsibility? I think these are questions which need serious consideration.
So you're saying not just pause the exercise but also reconsider his architecture of what they were suggesting initially. Along with that, do you also think that earlier you mentioned that ECI over the years has been a very friendly institution? With this exercise, do you see that nature of the ECI changing a little bit or being altered?
I don't have enough sort of evidence or enough information to comment on any fundamental change in the ECI's nature or character. But the approach which has been followed this time is certainly new. It seems to be weighing more, giving more responsibility on the citizens. See, let's take one example. Very interestingly, there is a problem in India that people enroll themselves in more than one constituency, either by design or by default. You live in a city and then you migrate to another city for job. You get yourself enrolled here there without bothering that your name should be deleted. Election Commission is conscious of the duplicate entries, and it has undertaken very serious and even effective exercises in the past to clean up the role from that point of view. The responsibility under the law is of the elector, that he has to make sure or she has to make sure that I am not enrolled in more than one place. And still, ECI has not taken action against any elector because he or she has been found to be enrolled in more than one place. That is because ECI has adopted a very sympathetic approach, and they are confident that even if for some reason you are enrolled in more than one place, you will cast your vote only at one place. So what I am saying is that ECI has been very accommodating as far as the electors are concerned. But this time, the result of this exercise or the outcome of this exercise could mean that because of the procedure adopted, many people might be excluded. And that is unprecedented.
So, when we talk about the independence of the ECI, I think if I look back, the allegations over or even the opposition's concerns started coming up a lot more with regard to when the Supreme Court issued an order saying that the CJI should be a part of the selection panel, and then the centre came up with a law excluding the CJI. And now, when the new election commissioners were appointed, there were allegations that they are the PM's choice exclusively. How do you view this? Do you think that the appointment should have happened as per what the Supreme Court had suggested, or do you think this is the correct procedure to go about it?
Apoorva, since the beginning of the election commission and the commencement of our republic, it is always the government which has made appointments of election commissioners. And the same process has produced outstanding election commissioners. So I don't think any process can guarantee the outcome. In the same process, you might have people whose performance is outstanding and people whose performance might not be considered to be good enough. So I don't think it is the process that is important. But yes, the perception is that if this selection panel and the selection procedure was more broad based, then to that extent, I think it might have become more acceptable and invited less criticism.
Right.
Staying on the question of the independence of EC again, or the lack of it, so there is a perception, there is a growing perception that standing up to the political executive comes at a great cost, and many actually refer to your own case, the way you had questioned your red flag certain speeches made by the PM and the HM during 2019 general elections, and subsequently your elevation to the ADB, and you were not I mean, in a way, you are not made the CEC which you could have become. So, what is your view on this entire perception that you cannot really stand up to the political executive anymore?
No, I don't think that it is fair to draw any conclusion on the basis of one instance or one case. So the institution has a character, it has a history. The government as an establishment, it has its own way of dealing with institutions. I would not like to draw any conclusion on the basis of that.
Right.
With that, we've reached the end of this episode. Thank you so much for joining us, sir. I'm sure our viewers are going to find your inputs extremely valuable. For our viewers, do let us know in the comment section what you thought about this episode, and thank you so much for watching.